Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater is one of my all-time favorite video games, and that has nothing to do with its emotionally flaccid story. Here's why. If MGS2 improves on MGS1's gameplay in almost every way, then MGS3 fixes what few remaining issues with MGS2 remain without losing what made the core gameplay so great. Most notably, losing its fixed camera. I didn't mind it in MGS2, but there's no beating actually being able to steal what's in front of you. Plus, the option to switch to the vanilla fixed camera lets you actually see what lies ahead. You only hold one button to run and gun now, which makes the action more seamless. You don't trip when you roll down stairs anymore, sniping's tighter than MGS2's overly sensitive aim without feeling stiff like MGS1, and no more goddamn hand tremors because constantly needing to drug up to aim properly was terrible design in the first place. Finally, CQC is way more fluid. You just slam enemies down and boom, they're out cold. You can also use guards as human shields during a firefight if you ever need a breather. But what really elevates MGS3 is level design. Each room has the right amount of cover, giving you different methods to get from A to B without being forced to confront enemies. You also got armories and food supply stations that you can sabotage to make guards weaker, easier to poison, or limit the ammo in their main weapons. It's all practical, entertaining, and consistent. Like MGS2, the guards are tons of fun to dick around with. There's also a fair bit of variety to the guard type, so I wish the fire guys showed up more than once. In short, each room is a fun test to see how you get from A to B, be it clandestine to going utterly bananas. MGS3 takes the best of MGS's core gameplay and embraces it. Your environment is constantly changing, but the gameplay stays the same. Even some of the set pieces stay true to MGS3 doing what it does best. One is straight out of Mission Impossible, where you have to neutralize this guy called Major Rykov, then you gotta disguise yourself as him in order to gain access to a wing of Grozingrad. Another involves sabotaging fuel tanks to destroy the Shagohod, and there's an optional mission right before the fight with the end, where you have to infiltrate a heavily guarded cabin to gain access to a heavy machine gun. Each one gives you tons of different methods to pull off your objective, and they managed to create puzzles that feel fun and rewarding to pull off, like an extension of the stealth action goodness rather than a hindrance to it. MGS3 even manages to get creative with the go from A to B stuff. At one point you have to infiltrate a research station crawling with guards and jumpy scientists. You can either disguise yourself, let yourself be captured, or just sneak/kill your way to your objective. And like a good stealth action game, the facility has several entry and exit points. It's ripe with replay value, tons of options, ends with a great boss fight, and wasn't separated from the full game and sold for $40. Fucking crazy, right? It's not all roses though. While some of the set pieces are really good, others slow things down to a goddamn crawl, like the fucking caves. Yeah, there are options for maintaining visibility, but you're still navigating a tediously designed labyrinth with no guards. That massive jeep chase is a visual spectacle, but it's one note and drags on for way too long. I don't play MGS games to sit on rails and shoot non-stop. And what's the payoff to all that? A piss in my beard escort mission. Mind you, this one's only a few rooms long and has some clever ambushes, but all the waiting around for Eva to move her ass is time-consuming, and dragging her is not any better. The unique selling point of MGS3 is survival. You find your own food to maintain stamina. If you're injured, you cure specific ailments or let them heal over time. And to maintain cover, you try to blend in with your environment. All good in theory. In actuality, it's more like this. You crawled over a slightly brighter patch of dirt, pause the game and sift through menus. The end just shot you, pause the game, sift through menus to pull out a needle, then eat something. Constantly sifting through menus and sub-menus is disruptive, not immersive. It's also a complete gimmick. You can get by all game long without changing your camo outside of disguises. You don't have to kill a single animal to get by because guards drop rations pretty often, and most buildings tend to have food as well. And minus a few boss-specific injuries, you can just let your wounds heal over time. Besides using rotten food or live snakes as weapons, these features add nothing except mild annoyance. Also, while guards have a ton of fun secrets to share, if you interrogate them, there's a 90% chance Snake will just slit their throat because pressure-sensitive interrogation is murder, literally. There are other issues too, like how long it takes to load or save a single file or go to the main menu, but even at its worst, this stuff is relatively minor. Camouflage is there for people who dig it, and those who don't, like me, can just ignore it. I mean, in spite of MGS3's many flaws, it holds up really well 15 years later. And that isn't even talking about its amazing boss fights.
I will guide you to a world of anguish beyond your imagination.
Minus the Shagohod, every single boss in MGS3 is incredible. A solid half of them incorporate stealth into their encounters very well. The ones that don't make up for it by being incredibly versatile encounters with a wide array of attacks. Best yet, every encounter is highly open-ended. Each boss has their own gimmick, but they never restrict your options, so you always have tons of different methods and weapons to choose from with any given boss. I mean, certain bosses can be cheesed or even skipped, but even bosses like the Pain the Fear have tons of variety in their attacks and in all the strategies you can implement against them. None of these fights are especially hard, but each one is an encounter I always look forward to. The only reason Shagohod sucks is because the first half is yet another rail segment. The part where you're actually on the ground is actually pretty good, albeit pretty easy. MGS3's boss fights are all inventive, fun, open-ended, work within the parameters of the controllers, and encourage creativity. And this is all in a game you can clear in less than 4 hours if you skip cutscenes. Those few hours alone have more depth and variety to them than most of the 100+ hour long campaigns of today will ever have. It's why I've replayed MGS3 again and again since the HD edition came out, and haven't so much as thought about most of the games I've beaten since. Unfortunately, like MGS2, the story of MGS3 is my least favorite part of the game, just for different reasons.
What is the Philosopher's Legacy? Very well. I'll explain it before I kill you.
The premise of MGS3 is that it's 1964 and the Cold War is at its hottest. So Naked Snake, aka Young Big Boss, is sent on a mission to rescue a defecting Soviet rocket scientist named Sokolov, but then his mentor, the Boss, betrays the unit, captures Sokolov, and delivers him to the psychotic Colonel Volgin, along with a fun-sized nuke that Volgin uses on Sokolov's research station. So to prove America wasn't behind the nuking, Snake is sent back to destroy the weapon Sokolov is being forced to finish and eliminate both Volgin and the Boss. It's got all the makings of a classic spy flick. There's the plot, the colorful characters, the sexy love interest, the gleefully evil bad guy, the memorable henchman, and the spectacle. But Golden Era James Bond Snake Eater is not. 007 is a charismatic protagonist dripping with charm and personality.
Mr. Smith & Wesson, you've had your 6.
The closest Naked Snake has to a personality trait is being sexually aroused by firearms. He has his moments, but for the most part, Naked Snake is just a bland version of Solid Snake. He spends most of his screen time getting talked at. There's nothing informing on who he is as a character or any kind of backstory. The only thing tying him to the mission is his mentor betraying him. Here's the thing though, I don't really give a shit about the Boss. Snake Eater demands that I feel invested in this internal struggle that Snake endures without ever really giving me a reason to do so. The Boss has one 6-minute codec call with Snake at the very beginning of the game, which literally exists to telegraph her betrayal and to beat us over the goddamn head with the game's central theme. That's all we get, a single one-sided codec call. Literally every other scene between them is more monologuing followed by the Boss slapping Snake around. Nothing is learned as the game goes on. As a matter of fact, it takes a solid 12 uninterrupted minute monologue at the very end of the game just to get the Boss's backstory and motivation out, which wouldn't be necessary had any of those scenes between Snake or the Boss conveyed the information. I mean, sure, her backstory is tragic. The Boss is a well-rounded character with depth. She's also given a very maternal voice, courtesy of Laurie Allen, one that makes her feel less like a villain and more like a mother and a teacher, which triggers some inherent sympathy on a basic human level. It's enough to make me like her, but not enough to actually make me care, because all of her and Snake's super complicated history that transcends love and hate is told, never shown. It's like a revenge film. We know the protagonists cared about their dead loved ones, but the tragedy is just a vehicle for the revenging. We aren't actually sad that John Travolta's son got shot because we don't know the little Scientologist, just like we don't really know the Boss. For all her depth and complexity, the Boss is nothing more than a plot device. That's why the moment we pull the trigger on the Boss, I feel nothing. I literally just shot that fucking lady with 12 rockets. Why am I gonna care now? If Kojima wanted that moment to feel genuinely earned, then we should have seen more from these two than we actually got. To give you a solid example, the reason the Deathstroke story of Arrow works so well is because we spent most of the first season's flashbacks with Oliver and Slade. We saw Slade train Oliver, we saw them bicker and laugh. Their friendship wasn't told, it was shown. As such, we had a reason to be invested when Slade came back as Deathstroke. Show, don't fucking tell. That's always been Kojima's biggest problem as a writer, and it's worse here because for once he's trying to make the characters the focus, not his theme. And the problem is, as it's always been, his characters are information sponges more than they are actual characters. I believe that Snake cares about the Boss, but I don't care about Snake, so I'm not gonna feel sad just because Snake feels sad. Beyond that, I just found all the exposition and monologuing boring and dry as all hell. The only interesting thing I could say about the codec team is that Zero was the dude that gets shouted at by Murtaugh on Lethal Weapon 2.
I don't think you really want to go to South Africa.
Why not?
Because you're black. You are. He is.
There are some fun calls here and there, but none of them ever translate to the cutscenes. Eva works just fine as a Temptress, but she doesn't do anything to warrant Snake trusting her by the end. If anything, the Temptress realistically should have been seduced by the Snake, given the way he saves her ass time and time again. In Snake Eater, the real stars are the villains. The Cobras are awesome. They're all colorful boss characters who don't try to act like they're anything more than boss characters. They show up, have a big song and dance, then they explode. The end. No bullshit trying to give these non-characters with no screen time these melodramatic 8-minute death scenes. Instead, it's Volgin and Ocelot who get most of the screen time. Ocelot is more entertaining and memorable as a cocky young officer constantly getting schooled by Big Boss than he ever was as some mustache-trolling cartoon character. We actually see him grow and evolve as the game goes on, taking his harsh lessons to heart. And Volgin is a goddamn MGS villain done right. There's no pretense of trying to be noble like Solidus. Volgin is unapologetically evil. But unlike Liquid, Volgin doesn't monologue. Every time he shows up, he's doing something fucking awful. He's a complete maniac, and he's tons of fun as a result. Even if he is kind of a moron.
Admit it! We're after the location of the legacy. $100 billion! Philosopher's legacy is safely in my possession. In the underground vault of Groznygrad.
The action in the cutscenes is pretty entertaining, especially the final fight with Ocelot, which does feel like a Golden Era Bond moment, where the main henchman comes back for one last showdown. But these fun Bond moments are outweighed by the less fun MGS stuff. Dry exposition that drags on for way too long, and ham-fisted attempts at saying something deep which end up feeling preachy and obnoxious. Characters lack the necessary or believable development to make their journeys feel real, which in turn renders any emotion I could have felt moot. What MGS3 lacks is genuine humanity. Kojima knows how to make characters seem profound, but when every character speaks in monologues instead of just speaking to one another with real, meaningful back and forth, there's nothing human to connect with. I do get why people love the story of MGS3, and they aren't wrong for feeling that way, but it just didn't work for me. I connect with this.
There's a useful four-letter word, and you're full of it. When I kill, it's on the specific orders of my government, and those I kill are themselves killers.
Come, Mr. Bond. You disappoint me. You get as much fulfillment out of killing as I do, so why don't you admit it?
I admit killing you would be a pleasure.
Long before I connect with this.
Boss, what are you doing here? This can't be happening. What are you talking about? Boss, what are you doing here? Boss! Why'd you defect? Boss. Why are you doing this? Boss. A patriot. Why are you giving me this?
An RPG.
In spite of all of that, MGS3 is an amazing game, that's all there is to it. I didn't dig the story, but if you've kept up with my reviews thus far, you know that I don't really play these games for their writing. MGS3's gameplay is straightforward yet surprisingly deep. The boss fights are more enjoyable, replayable, and more open-ended than most boss fights I've encountered in gaming since. And while some sequences drag and bring the entire experience down to a crawl, each low point is always rewarded with an entertaining boss fight for my troubles. I'm not gonna be mad at that. And so my final rating for MGS3 is a 9 out of 10. In spite of my issues, MGS3 remains one of the best games I've ever played. Just not for the reasons most MGS fans share. And for all my problems with the story and some of the set pieces, I've replayed this game more times than I can count. So whatever your thoughts, let me know in the comments. If you like this review and want to see more, hit that subscribe button. Next week is MGS4 and Peace Walker the week after. Maybe. Anyway, thanks for watching. Also, 10 years ago before MGS3, Volgin was the voice of Green Goblin.
I can't.
You can! You must! Let me out, Norman.